If you're trying to refresh your memory on Dune Part 2, this recap's got you covered. Hopefully, you've already watched Part 1, where Paul and Jessica escape the Harkonnen coup and end up wandering in the desert. So, let's jump right in from where we left off in Dune Part 1. Under the orange glow of an Elden Ring, Stilgar is still leading his Fremen tribe, along with Paul and Jessica, back to their setch. They're being hunted by the Harkonnens, who are pushing further into the desert than ever before. But the Harkonnens overextend themselves, leading to a counterattack. Now, Paul has to step up and get proactive instead of hiding, with his mom, Jessica, covering him. The Fremen tribe seizes more equipment and even strips the Harkonnens of their body water, which isn't doing Jessica's morning sickness any favors. After clearing out evidence worm style, they move on to Sietch Tabr. Here things get tense. Half the locals aren't too thrilled to meet an off-world killer like Paul, while the other half, believers in prophecy, think he might be their messiah, the Lisan al-Gaib. This is where Stilgar has a crucial conversation with the elders, supporting Paul, who's not exactly ready for the spicy local food that amuses the Fremen. Still, Chani assures them that Paul can fight. Meanwhile, the Harkonnens, led by Rabban, are making a big show of power, retaking control of the northern desert, though Rabban's lack of knowledge about the southern regions is stressing him out. Jessica gets invited by Stilgar to see their sacred water cache, a key part of the Fremen's dream of turning Arrakis into a green paradise. As part of their rituals, the moisture from the dead, like Jameis, is returned to the tribe. Stilgar wants Jessica, as a Bene Gesserit, to replace their aging Reverend Mother through a dangerous ritual that involves drinking the water of life, a poisonous substance. The ceremony would transfer generations of wisdom and memories to Jessica, but her unexpected pregnancy throws a wrench in things, pulling the unborn child into premature consciousness with all the intergenerational knowledge too. This causes a strain on Jessica's mental health. Meanwhile, Stilgar comes from a more zealous part of the desert and is beginning to witness miracles, while tensions rise between the northern and southern tribes. Paul, trying to keep the peace, admits he's not the prophesied leader, but just wants to learn their ways and fight alongside them. This satisfies both the modernists and the religious fundamentalists. Stilgar begins training Paul in desert survival, mixing solid advice with spooky Fremen tales. Chani also steps in to teach Paul how to master rhythmic walking and other Fremen techniques for surviving the desert. Before getting back into action, the Fremen start disrupting Harkonnen spice production. In the shadow of a harvester, they explode into a tight, efficient takedown of the Harkonnens. But air support is no joke and doesn't care who it hits, so the team has to stay mobile. Chani preps a bazooka while Paul covers her, baiting himself as a juicy target to give her the perfect shot. She nails a shield-slipping shot, and the rest of the crew finishes off the job with a laser gun. During the aftermath, even the doubters start to relate to Paul's experiences of loss, and he says all the right things about the Fremen's cause being bigger than his own survival. This earns him a spot as a Fedaykin, where he adopts the name Muad'Dib, which is a powerful title in Stilgar's eyes. After trying to explain the concept of swimming in the sea to Chani, who's a desert girl through and through, Paul and Chani grow closer. Their bond strengthens as they lead successful attacks on Harkonnen spice operations, which is making Rabban look weak to his uncle, Baron Harkonnen, who's venting his frustration by killing servants. Meanwhile, Jessica is starting to lose it a bit, talking directly to her unborn child, which is creeping out some of the Fremen. Her main goal is to protect Paul by playing up the religious prophecy angle and getting him to drink the water of life to unlock his full potential. As Paul takes the final test of a true Fremen by summoning and riding a massive sandworm, Jessica wastes no time weaving this into the prophecy of his ascension. She sends her converted zealots to spread the word about Paul's destiny. This sets off alarm bells for Chani, who knows Paul's had visions of billions dying if he follows his mother's path. While Jessica heads to the southern desert to stir up more Fremen support in Paul's name, Paul remains in the north as a frontline fighter, trying to avoid the God path that could spiral out of control. He directly attacks the spice depots at Arrakis, forcing Rabban to respond. Rabban launches a full-on assault with cyberpunk trackers and air forces, but his frustration gets the better of him. He blindly fires at their last known location before leading a ground assault, only to be outsmarted by Fremen tactics. Rabban soon realizes he's walked into a trap with zero visibility, and things get worse when even the average Fremen warrior is nearly enough to take him out. He barely escapes with his life, tail between his legs. Meanwhile, back on the Imperial homeworld, the Emperor is staying quiet about his support for the Harkonnens, but his daughter, who's been trained by the Bene Gesserit, starts to piece together what's going on. She recognizes that the Fremen's new prophet looks more like an off-world insurgent trained by the Bene Gesserit. So, here's where things get real crazy for Paul Atreides. After all the fighting, spice raids, and his ascension among the Fremen, it's time for some serious revelations. First off, the Bene Gesserit are still playing 4D chess, keeping tabs on all potential power players. They've got their eyes on the Baron's other nephew, Fade Rautha, the psychotic gladiator who's celebrating his birthday by testing out some new knives on his servants. Casual. This guy's a wild card, and the Bene Gesserit, especially Lady Margot, are keeping him on their radar. And surprise, she's even managed to pull a little witchy magic, seducing and manipulating him for future control. Talk about multitasking. Meanwhile, Paul's former mentor Gurney Halleck turns up alive and kicking as a smuggler, teaming up with the Fremen to throw a wrench in the Harkonnen spice operation. Classic Gurney, always in for the fight, but now he's helping Paul figure out the balance between leading the Fremen in a war of revenge and trying not to trigger his visions of galactic doom. And speaking of heavy decisions, Paul learns the Atreides still have access to their family atomics, a whole arsenal just waiting to blow something sky high. The question is, will Paul use them? Over in Harkonnen land, Fade's been promoted to take over from his brother, and instead of messing around with ground troops, he's just leveling cities with old-school artillery. Real subtle. It's forcing Paul and his crew to rethink their strategy. The religious fervor Jessica's been stirring up isn't helping either. Things are getting a little too intense for Paul's taste as the Fremen start calling him their messiah more than just their leader. The pressure is on, and he knows it. Jessica also drops the bomb that the sacred water of life, a key to unlocking Bene Gesserit powers, is actually made from baby sandworms. Lovely. And, in a dramatic turn of events, Paul goes all in, drinking a forbidden male dose of the stuff, something that's supposed to be fatal. But because he's Paul freaking Atreides, he survives, entering a coma so deep that everyone thinks he's dead. Except Jessica, who keeps the faith, literally and figuratively. In his comatose state, Paul unlocks the memories of his ancestors and gets a crystal clear vision of the future. Arrakis turned into a lush green world, with his grown-up sister Aaliyah welcoming him back. But it's not all good news. He realizes that to win this fight, he'll need to embrace the more ruthless side of his heritage. Yeah, that's right, the Harkonnen blood in him. Turns out, Jessica is actually the Baron's daughter, and Paul's got to tap into that darker part of his lineage if he's going to survive what's coming next. By the time he wakes up, Paul is a changed man, ready to lead not just as the noble Atreides, but as someone willing to make the hard, brutal choices. Everyone around him feels the shift, especially Chani, who knows that things have just gotten a whole lot more complicated. The stage is set for Paul to fully step into his destiny. Whether that's as a savior, a tyrant, or something in between remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, things are about to get a whole lot messier on Arrakis. Because at the Great Meeting where only the tribal leaders are allowed to speak, an injured Still Guard would gladly lay down his life for Paul to take his place. Talk about dedication, right? But then the prophet comes in hot, flipping their self-destructive customs right back at them. He calls out every single person in the room, like, hey, wake up people, let's talk real. This isn't just some casual chat. Paul's weaving a narrative that has everyone emotionally invested. He's got that crowd manipulation game on lock, recounting their intimate histories and secrets, binding everyone to his cause. It's like he's throwing a giant emotional party, and everyone's vibing hard. And just like that, all the Fremen are suddenly Team Paul, riding the hype train. Meanwhile, Gurney's fully committed, embracing his ducal roots. It's like a family reunion with all the drama of a reality TV show, and then Paul steps up to challenge the Emperor, dropping some serious shade. I mean, talk about a power move. Then there's the Emperor himself, who's oblivious to the fact that he's about to get played. He heads to Arrakis with his whole army, flexing his muscles like he's the main character in a superhero movie, while the Baron's sweating bullets over the uprising are brewing right under his nose. But plot twist, Paul's got a massive Fremen army just outside the city, and he uses family atomics to blow the mountain walls wide open. Boom. Debris everywhere, and the Sadrakar army gets wrecked by a surprise attack of Leviathan sandworms. It's a total chaos fest, and Paul's just sitting back, watching the mayhem unfold. As if that weren't enough, Chie is leading a brutal ground assault, turning the tides in the Fremen's favor, and Gurney is ready for some revenge for his fallen duke. He floods the streets with soldiers, waving the Atreides banner like a battle flag. It's a decisive victory, and Paul marches right up to confront his grandfather, making a statement that echoes through the desert. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. As Paul and Chie share a moment, he makes it clear he'll love her as long as he breathes. But then he's got to dive back into the Game of Thrones-esque political drama. He calls out an official grudge match against the Emperor, even outshining his mother's witchy vibes. And guess who steps up as the Emperor's champion? Fade Routha, Paul's cousin. Oh boy, it's family drama at its finest. Fade's got his own tricks up his sleeve, ready to dance around Paul's moves, and plot twist, he sinks Paul's own knife into his side. Talk about betrayal, right? But instead of freaking out, Paul accepts the blow, pulling out his own knife in return. Classic. And just when you think it can't get any crazier, we have some snarky psychic banter between the Reverend Mothers, and the former Emperor is forced to kiss Paul's ring. I mean, can you say dramatic flair? Now, Paul's stuck in a bind. He's marrying Ireland to claim the throne, but all the great houses aren't having it, leading to the holy war he desperately tried to avoid. It's a real tragedy, especially for Chie, who can't hang around anymore. Paul may be the prophesied leader, but it's all rooted in social and genetic engineering, not divine intervention. The end of Dune leaves us with a complex landscape for Paul's future, filled with both promise and peril. Throughout the film, the mantra, "Fear is the mind killer," plays a crucial role in shaping Paul's journey. Yet by the conclusion, we come to understand the core of his fear, the destiny that seems predestined for him. As Paul envisions a future where he conquers worlds to establish peace, it highlights a significant internal conflict. He doesn't crave power or conquest. In fact, he's deeply troubled by the violent path that destiny demands. The weight of his father's death has thrust him into a role he never wanted, forcing him to grapple with the harsh reality that achieving peace in Arrakis will inevitably involve violent confrontation with the Harkonnens. This dichotomy between his desire for peace and the reality of needing to ally with the Fremen, who are fierce warriors, creates a tension that will undoubtedly shape his character moving forward. The conclusion also marks a pivotal turning point for Paul. He's stepping into his identity as a leader, but importantly, he does so amidst the Fremen, a group he's learning to understand and align with. This shift is essential, as Paul has largely been surrounded by authority figures throughout the film. By embracing his destiny among the Fremen, he begins to carve out a path that is authentically his own. Emotionally, this evolution signifies Paul's confrontation with his fears. The act of killing in battle isn't just a plot point, it's emblematic of a larger theme woven through Dune, the notion that power comes at a cost. The film underscores that peace is rarely achieved without bloodshed, and Paul is now faced with the harsh reality that to secure his future and the future of his people, he must get his hands dirty. The overarching question, lingering as we conclude this chapter of Paul's story, is whether he can navigate this dark path without losing himself. Will the darkness required for leadership consume him, or can he maintain his moral compass while becoming the leader he's destined to be? This tension sets the stage for the unfolding saga as Paul grapples with the consequences of his choices and the true nature of power and sacrifice. Ultimately, the end of Dune is not just a conclusion, but a launching point into the deeper, more complex struggles that lie ahead for Paul, both externally against his enemies and internally as he confronts his own fears and the weight of his destiny. So, that's a wrap on Dune Part 2. If you enjoyed this epic recap journey through politics, power plays, and family drama, hit that subscribe button. Huge thanks to everyone who chimed in on Part 1. Your feedback is gold. Until next time, take care and keep the spice flowing.